Most people don't realize that perhaps the most important skill that lawyers must have is the ability to write. TV and media glamorize attorney arguments in the courtroom and statements delivered to a jury. But the majority of the time, what most lawyers are doing day in and day out is writing. Whether it be routine motions or briefs to the court, lawyers are writers. In fact, the majority of law school is dedicated to learning how to think like a lawyer and learning how to write. Just think about the United States Supreme Court for a second, the most important and powerful court in the land. Most lawyers will tell you Supreme Court cases are won based on the written briefs. And just look at the opinions of the justices. They are crazy, detailed, and complex. So today, I'm going to teach you a simple structure that lawyers use that will make you a better writer. If you follow this structure, your writing will become simpler, more logical, and it will be designed to persuade. So join me as I explain what a C.R.A.C or C.R.A.C format is and how you can use it to be a better writer and to win like a lawyer. Welcome everybody to Joe the Lawyer. I am your host, Joe Pometto, a practicing attorney in Pittsburgh, PA, where I have my own small law firm. This is a new series on my show titled Win Like a Lawyer, where I teach my audience skills that lawyers learn and use. Skills that can be applied to almost any area of business, employment, or professional life. Now, before we dig into the content that I have prepared for you today, everyone, some of you may have come here to see Win Like a Lawyer, but other came for the same time sip. This is a sip that we take together because it tastes better. I'm drinking coffee today. Everyone cheers with me. Cheers. Delicious. Okay, so let's jump in. The structure I am advocating for is called a C.R.A.C. Lawyers, just like the military, love acronyms. I am both a lawyer and former military, so get ready for a fun-filled acronym ride. C.R.A.C stands for Conclusion, Rule, Application, and Conclusion. Yes, it also stands for crack. Make your jokes now, get them out of the way. Back to the lesson. C.R.A.C is designed to lead a reader down a logical path into the conclusion you are advocating for. It makes the conclusion seem inevitable. There are variants of C.R.A.C, including the C.R.A.C with an E and I.R.A.C, which many lawyers and law students are familiar with. But I want to stick with C.R.A.C today because I think it is the simplest and best to be applied to all forms of writing. So let's start with an example of a C.R.A.C paragraph. Doc did not burglarize the boarding house. A person is guilty of burglary if he enters a building with the intent to commit a crime. But it is a defense to burglary if that building is an abandoned structure. Here, the evidence shows that Doc entered the boarding house on 312 Fremont Street and stole a 100-year-old bottle of scotch from beneath a floorboard. However, further investigation shows that the building has not been occupied for at least 139 years, and thus it was abandoned. So in conclusion, Doc did not burglarize the boarding house when he entered and took the bottle of scotch because the house had been abandoned for 139 years. That is our example paragraph. Now, let's break it down piece by piece. First, the conclusion in my example, and in all C.R.A.Cs, the first sentence or first few sentences will be the conclusion. Here is how I started it, with the following. The conclusion. Doc did not burglarize the boarding house. This is the conclusion that you want the reader to reach. This is what you are advocating for. Thus, you mention it first. Your reader is busy and skeptical. Get straight to the point. This will prime your reader for where the facts are going to lead them. If you only provide a conclusion at the end, Much of what they read prior to getting to the punchline may seem pointless. Providing the conclusion at the beginning primes the reader and makes the rest of the paragraph appear logical and meaningful. Next, we look at the rule. The rule in our paragraph is as follows. A person is guilty of burglary if he enters a building with the intent to commit a crime, but it is a defense to burglary if that building is an abandoned structure. The rule for legal writing is going to be the law. This establishes the rule for the facts we are about to look at and why we reach the conclusion that we do. The rule establishes the reasons for why we reach that conclusion. In non-legal writing, you can substitute for rule your reasons, and poof, our acronym still survives, C.R.A.C. Notice there are actually two parts to the rule, two sentences, two separate rules. Rules can have anywhere from 1 to 3 to 10 parts or more. Thus, state your conclusion, then the reasons or rules for your conclusion, and then on to the next part of the structure, the application or analysis. Here is our example. Here, the evidence shows that Doc entered the boarding house on 312 Fremont Street and stole a 100-year-old bottle of scotch from beneath the floorboard. However, further investigation shows the building has not been occupied for at least 139 years, and thus it was abandoned. This part can be called the application or the analysis. Regardless, what you are doing is applying the rule to the facts and analyzing them. The root of the word analyze is actually Greek and it means to loosen. When you loosen something, you get to the solution, like untying a knot. Thus, this paragraph is a combination of the facts under examination and the relevant rule or reasons. You can see, we tell the story of how Doc did in fact steal a bottle of scotch from the house, but the house was abandoned, and abandonment is the key aspect of the rule. This application then leads naturally to the last part of the structure, the conclusion. And here is the conclusion. So in conclusion, Doc did not burglarize the liquor store when he took the bottle of scotch from 312 Fremont because the house had been abandoned for 139 years. This is where you wrap it up with a nice bow on top. You cite how the application, the fact that the house Doc stole from was abandoned, leads to the conclusion. Doc did not commit burglary. This conclusion will, in effect, always be similar to the opening paragraph. I like to use the word because in my conclusions. Because is a great word when it comes to explaining. Now you can see how this structure, the C.R.A.C, logically will lead a reader right into your palms. They'll be left with no choice but to draw the same conclusion as you. Also, if you structure your writing like this, you will be sure to always reach a logical and well thought out position due to the funnel-like nature of the structure. Your writing will become much more persuasive. In the C.R.A.C, you introduce your conclusion right away and then explain why you reached it. Then you repeat the conclusion. This repetition portion is also powerful and will embed the idea in the reader's minds. This format is best for persuasive writing. But let's be honest, that is what the majority of writing is. Fiction or storytelling is and can be different. There's also more scientific types of writing. But the majority of the time, we are writing to convince people of something, a certain position. Whether it be an email, a letter to a local school board, we are usually asking somebody to do something. C.R.A.C gives you the tools needed to persuade effectively and logically. A few more tips. You can sprinkle in counter-arguments when using this structure. By admitting counter-arguments and the weaknesses in your own arguments, you gain credibility with the reader. I'll do future videos focusing solely on counter-arguments and the other formats I mentioned earlier. But if you want to address a counter-argument in a C.R.A.C, do it after your own application, but before your conclusion. Also, this structure can be as short as one paragraph, or it can encompass 10-page or a 50-page paper. In a 50-page paper, every point made can be written within the C.R.A.C format. Finally, this structure may seem counter to what you are used to. It can seem a bit, arrogant to state your conclusion up front. We are used to the conclusion coming at the end and only after proof has been provided. But set that aside. Your goal is to persuade and to be rational. And by putting the conclusion first, you will make that conclusion primary and reach those goals. So put the C.R.A.C to the test. Conclusion, role, application, conclusion in your writing. You will become a better writer and you will learn to write like a lawyer and win like a lawyer. Thank you for watching this episode of Joe the Lawyer. If you like my content, please like, subscribe, comment, and share. It's a free way to support this show. I hope everyone enjoys this new series. Thank you, everyone, and have a fantastic day.